Hey, what's up guys? I am Brian and this is Tech Therapy. Today's session is going to be on the TV panel lottery. It is unfortunately alive and well, and this video will discuss all aspects of it.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? Thank you so much for joining me. Today's video is on the panel lottery. It's what it sounds like. It's basically all the research, all of the budgeting, all of the passion, everything you're looking for in a TV. The hard stuff is over, then you buy it. And actually, the panel lottery is luck of the draw. Hopefully you get a good one. Now, what people think is ridiculous in the panel lottery, it's not as simple as the panel not working or the panel showing up and having a cracked chassis or a cracked screen. Those are the very easy ones to choose. The really tough ones with the panel lottery are more screen uniformity issues that are not always in line with the manufacturer or then the retailer. That's where it gets really, really dicey, but I'm getting ahead of myself right now. This video also covers a little bit of, and I did a video on this that you can check out, I'll link that below, is inherent flaws versus defects. Now, an inherent flaw might be a little DSC on an LED or blooming. Not a defect, an inherent flaw. Now, a defect for blooming may be that there's one part that's always lit up in the same spot, whether it's SDR or HCR, that is a defect. Vertical banding on an OLED, or especially a WRGB OLED, they all have vertical banding. If you have a large band on the middle of the screen, which is much different color, or I should say a hazier version or a light band right in your view, that is a defect. Bands throughout the panel, not a defect. If you get where I'm going, it's a very fine line between the tolerance of what you think is a defect versus the retailer and or manufacturer. So I've done videos on that. The channel was born of 11 defective panels from myself that were of very high end, first starting at 4,000 and leading up to 10,000. Now, I will tell you in that journey, that's why this channel was born. That's why it's called Tech Therapy and why I started doing this, is I thought I would spend my way out of it. I started with a Vizio, I went to Samsung, and then I went all the way top to Samsung's flagship at the time, which was the KS9800. And I'll tell you what I found later in the video. Those are on the channel as well. But why I want to do this video here is I did a video recently, actually a couple days ago, on the Samsung S95B QD OLED. The video basically is where I said pound for pound, it's the best panel this year, especially at 55 and 65. At its value, it is tremendous. It is not only high-end itself, it's a new technology, and it has high-end picture quality, and the value is ridiculous, especially with its feature set, gaming, HDMI, MI inputs, things of that nature. Now, in that video, when I was watching the live premiere and chatting, content creator, very good content creator, the tech giant, Paul the tech giant, was in the chat. And while he's watching the Samsung S95B video, he says to me, my QD OLED died. So I'll link Paul's video below so you can see an absolute defect on his panel. And special shout out to Paul. Check out his channel. Subscribe to it. Great content, great guy. But what's funny with Paul's video is that it's an obvious defect. So I do feel bad that that happened to Paul, but that one should be easy to remedy. It's obvious. Half the screen doesn't work. The panel doesn't function. The manufacturer and or retailer should agree you're all set. It's the ones in between that we struggle with, that the retailer and again, the manufacturer aren't going to see eye to eye on. So again, check out Paul's video. You can see an example. But furthermore, in my video in Samsung, go back and watch that video. It's the reputation of quality control from Samsung that people find very disturbing. People feel they are the most #1 returned TVs. Now, in some ways, I do agree. I've returned several of them. Now, when I return panels, guys, there isn't one instance where I didn't like it. We started in 2016, the beginning of HDR and 4K, KS9000, KS9500, KS9800. What it was at that time was the introduction of HDR, large panels, very thin bezels, squeezing the edge lit, causing all kinds of problems. Now, looking back on that, Samsung would say that was an inherent flaw. Back, what it was basically light jetting into the screen. It was unwatchable. Those panels started at 7,000 and moved all the way up to, like, again, 10,000 price, 12,000 retail. I didn't pay 12, I paid 10. But the point is, I was very down on Samsung at the time. Now, is Samsung the main culprit or the main villain? Well, it's funny, if you look at my experience, you would think I would never recommend another one again. I recommend them every day. The thing is, you have to be able to step outside and be objective and say to yourself, they sell the most TVs on the planet by far. They are the industry leader. When you take the percentage of defects and compare them to a Sony, which sells a fraction of what they sell, it doesn't really add up. The fact of the matter is, I've had defective panels from every company you can think of. LG, Sony, Samsung, Vizio. Now, I had a TCL with the most beat up box imaginable, and that one was fine. But TCLs for many, many years were known for screen uniformity issues across the board. They came with DSC. It was something you had to accept. They are much better now. But Samsung, pound for pound, sells the most TVs, even at the highest end. So I wonder if it is quality control on their part, or it's just the amount of the panels. I can't not recommend the S95B based on some of the defects that I've heard. There's just so many of them out there. Now, there'll be some harsh speech in this video in regards to the main thing about going through the panel lottery. It is crushing emotionally. It is one of those things like any other large purchase. I don't care. And also remember, when I say large purchase, I don't care if that's $500 or $5,000. That goes on to your financial situation. That might be a big purchase to you. But the problem with any large purchase or any purchase of any kind is that when things go wrong, it begins to sap the experience. Now, with TVs, you have this very interesting electronic device that has many different ways to fail you. A GPU, a game console, they either work or they don't. You might find times where a PS5, one is louder than the other. But for the most part, they function. If they don't function, they fail, they're defective, they go. You don't look at a PS5 or a console, even a GPU, and say, I don't know, I think that's doing its job. Is it not? A dishwasher, any other appliance, you buy them, they function or they don't. Speaking of appliances, I will tell you this. You are not allowed to buy appliance, especially a high-end one, and change your mind. There is no buying a Viking or a Wolf or any other appliance. You can't go back to wherever you bought it and say, yeah, I don't really like it. They will tell you, I am sorry, you're stuck with it. It doesn't work. You will pay to have it repaired. I just went through this not long ago. Very high-end stove, very high-end, the vent, everything else matched up. I had issues with it right away when I bought it. The first thing they said, we'll send somebody out. I said, well, how many of these are you going to send out till you replace it? They're like, it's many. There is nowhere to stand. So going into TVs, it is one of the only appliances that you see visually, that you look at and say, I don't know if I like that. I don't know what's happening. The reason why I want to do this video is that clear defects like Paul the Tech Giant was going through. Watch his video. When you see that, that is an easy one. You'll call up Samsung or the retailer. They will tell you to cycle it, hard reset it, hold the volume button, the power button. I've been through this a million times. And then they will say, okay, well, that's clearly a defective panel. We'll either match it or send you out a new one or whatever. That's an easy one. So again, I'm sorry to Paul, but Paul, hopefully they just take care of you and you're all set. The problem that many of you have, especially if you're watching videos like mine, you're an enthusiast. You buy a speaker. What's so scary about speakers is that you don't know how they're going to sound till you get them home. Companies like SVS you can call and you can try. They're very easy to pack up. I promise you they sell those probably not as an open box. TVs are nearly impossible. Once they're open, they're open. But when it comes to a speaker, you like the sound of it. If it crackles, pretty much it works. There's a connection, you have a sound. As far as TVs, it's uniformity. Buying monitors back in the day, many of you thought back then, okay, there's a glow around it, IPS glow. It was just part of the inherent flaw. Back then, you looked for dead pixels. Dead pixels are a good one because if you see dead pixels, your opinion of what is a return and what Samsung, LG, or Sony think are vastly different. You would say, I can't have any dead pixels. They will say between 12 and 14 are acceptable. Now, here's the middle part of that. First of all, I see dead pixels on a brand new panel, it goes back. No questions asked. I will not stand for that if I'm in my return window. Key to this whole conversation, I don't care where you buy. I don't care if you buy from a mom and pops like Value Electronics, you buy from Best Buy, Amazon, Costco. Familiar yourself with what the return window is. That return window, find out what the policy is. It may not be a no questions asked. There might be a restocking fee or reshipping fee. You have to check with no matter where you buy, find out what that policy is. A small retailer is not going to be able to afford to ship things back at $500, $600 and then be stuck with an open TV that you think might not look the way you want. It doesn't work easy. Doesn't power on. The chassis is scratched or cracked or there's a problem. Those are rampant too. So for me, I wonder, is the Panyo lottery a manufacturing or a transit problem? So I know this video is all over the map, but this is the way you guys will be thinking about it. Give you an example, inherent flaw, Evo panel, G2, G1. Try and find one without pink tint. Unfortunately, it's an inherent part of that panel. The question would be for you is how much content do you see it in? You see it in all content, that is a defect. You see where it gets dicey? So you might have that disagreement. I've had Samsung, Sony, and LG on the phone, and they've heard, no, that's normal. You get into Best Buy or any of the bigger manufacturers, no, that's totally fine. I've brought pictures in. Now, it gets very crazy when you start looking very close in what we call pixel peeping. Now, in pixel peeping, that's when you get so obsessed that you continue to look for flaws. You get your TV and right away you're looking for problems. You're going to find them. And I should have said this in the beginning of the video. There are no perfect panels. They all have some issue. Screen uniformity on every single OLED ever made. There are going to be some problems. Screen uniformity on a piece of glass that's at your house, a door, anything that we see manufactured by machine or human is going to have some variance. There's going to be some tolerance of issue. Otherwise, none of them would pass. Nothing would ever make it pass inspection and then go out the door. So I know I'm all over the place, but talk about, is it manufacturing? Then you have transit. If the box is not damaged, that doesn't mean it's not bouncing around. I was at Costco the other day filming, and I was amazed at how pristine the boxes were. Well, they show up there on an enormous pallet. They don't show up one at a time. I've had panels drop shipped to me. You've seen the truck driver, though the box isn't damaged, I saw a truck driver take the panel, throw it up on its end, not on its side, tall-wise, slide it out towards me. Yeah, the box looks fine, but it's been jostled. It's been moved. Now that we're very concerned with the environment as we should be, the boxes are thinner than ever. So even though the box doesn't have structural damage, meaning there's no rips or tears in it, it doesn't mean it hasn't been dropped. The box won't be damaged if it's dropped. If you're picking it up and moving it around, then you have people that are literally dropping things off, sliding them in the doorway. That's very hard to avoid. Very hard. You can white glove ship it. You can do all those different things. You still have humans bringing them over to like, oh, nice TV. That's a chance with every piece of technology or every other thing sent to you. Where TVs are different is there's many different levels to what can go wrong. Now, again, Paul, Tech Giant, his barely functions, half the screen doesn't work, no questions asked, it goes back. Dead pixels in the center of the screen, right where you can view them, that goes back. Heavy banding in the middle of the screen. In video games, you pan, you see a different shade where it looks like it's tinted. That goes back. But you can see where that gets out of hand. You can see where you get too picky and start saying, well, I want it to be perfect. I spent $10,000 on this TV and they have to be absolutely perfect. And that's where you would be wrong. Now, I'm not saying that in a brutal way, but it's the truth. Ferraris have issues. Check engine lights come on brand new cars. You can't bring that car back. I know this. I've had friends deal with this. The Ferrari syndrome. $1 million houses, multiple $1 million houses having issues. People do make mistakes. They don't think always about quality. You might go to a restaurant and get a bad meal. Just because you spend the money means absolutely nothing. When I spent that much money on the KS9800, I called and I thought I had some pull. Hey, this TV is 10 grand. I said, okay, sir. Now remember, this is pre-lockdown. People were definitely more patient back then. So even as I got frustrated and got louder and kept escalating it, you're not making it past the first phone call. Don't get loud. Don't lose patience. People do not care. And I will promise you, the more money you spend, the less they care. There is no empathy for your struggle. You walk into a Best Buy and say, hey, look, man, I spent $8,000 on this TV. You think the salesman's going to go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Must be nice that you spend that money. And the more you're talking about TVs, the more maddening it gets. Nobody cares. Most people, 90% of them, probably more, want to know if it turns on. You can watch a TV. Back in the LED days, you knew there was an issue because there was a blue line down the screen. Most people watch panels with screen uniformities. They have no idea that it's there. So in the manufacturer's thought process, LG, Samsung, TCL, Hisense, most of them, they think they're doing fine. Ignorance is bliss for most people. Us being enthusiasts, having that eye, is a blessing and a curse. I can see banding from a mile away. I can see blooming from a mile away. But I've been through this over a year and a half. Time I will never get back. It was crushing. Now, why is it crushing? Well, it's a TV, man. Exactly. But the thing is, that TV was there in your downtime to fulfill a need. You're exhausted, you want to just watch TV. The first few videos on this channel are that KS9800. There was a blue lightning line down there. You know what they told me? It was intermittent. Doesn't matter. I'm sorry, it happens sometimes. Then they updated it and it got worse. Sound familiar? But the fact is, you're still such a small percentage. The more niche or the more of an enthusiast you are, the less they care. Samsung makes so much money selling to hotels, restaurants, Costco. Those people buy TVs, put them on a bar, turn them on, they look great. Why do they look great? There is not a watching that is so focused. It's not critical viewing. It's in a restaurant. How many TVs have you seen in a restaurant you thought looked amazing at a bar? And you walk up, you're like, wow, that's fuzzy. But from 20 feet away, looks fantastic. We're the nut jobs. But I am the one that does watch this thing, and I will tell you, this is one of the cleanest C1s I have ever seen. There's banding on it. There's certain content that shows it. My CX was defective. I had large bands. I could see it in all shades. My CX also had a processing issue where the blacks would float and crawl. That was a defective panel. I could tell that one while it was still in the box. In the LG setup menu. Now, I was within my return window, so it was a no questions asked scenario. But this is it. It was no questions asked in this regard. It was still a defect. I didn't say I didn't like it. First of all, let's go back to that. There is no returning panels because you don't like them. I know people will say this to me. Well, look, I spent the money. It should be what I want. Now, at a Costco or a place like that where it's 90 days, no questions asked, you can probably do that. You can probably say, hey, look, I don't like this. You cannot do that at Amazon. No questions asked, they will say to you, something wrong with it, sir. Best Buy does get returns. Their returns are typically, I bought the wrong size. You are going to pay a restocking fee. That panel cannot be sold as new. You will pay something. If you don't think that's true, tell me what you've been through. Put it in the comments for me. But I know because I've been through this. I fought that. I had pictures. The videos on the channel were sent to Samsung. It's crushing. And why is it crushing? Because it's another thing that goes wrong. And the fact that matter is, for me, I started mid-level with a P series. I went all the way to a flagship and then had to settle at a mid-range Sony. Now, the mid-range Sony was a 900E, which is one of the best panels ever made. But that ride of high-end to mid was painful. I didn't get what I wanted. No matter what I paid, no one cared. And no one cares. The sale is done. But you have to think about being reasonable. Now, where I was getting unreasonable is that every panel I bought from the third one on, I was in there with the magnifying glass, checking every corner, every pixel. Now, granted, all those were defective, but now I approach things much differently. When I buy a TV, the first thing I do is set it up and run content on it. I don't run any slides, nothing. I run content on it. For me, at how many ever minutes in, what I would recommend you do, first thing, wherever you buy, find the return policy. What is the return policy? It's this, it's that. Cool. Make your purchase. Get it home, have it delivered. The first thing you do is structurally check the box. Make sure the box is not damaged. If it's heavily damaged, I wouldn't accept delivery. The panel's been through a lot. We talked about how it could go through a lot and not have a destroyed box. It could still be jostled and thrown around. These panels are much thinner than they've ever been. They are all packaged well. So, check the box. Then what I do is I take it, put the TV where it's going to live. First thing, bring it to where it's going to be. And then run content. Every bit of content you could think. If you have a 10-day return window, do not spend any of those days taking it out of because once it's in your house, it's yours. That clock starts ticking. Then I would just watch content, but watch it hard. Movies, panning shots, gaming. Why is gaming important? You're controlling the point of view. Third-person shooters, first-person shooters, side scrollers. Pan the sky, but just play. Don't look initially. If you get that panel and start running scans or running slides, I should say, you're going to see an issue. Even the cleanest OLEDs will show you banding. So, watch content, see what happens, see how it goes. Then, as it gets closer to your window, think about what you've observed. I did see some banding in this scene. I did see it was mostly on this side. Then as you get to your closing window or your return window, then you can start running your slides. But don't start that way. It can become OCD very quickly. I have a friend, and I'll share this. They don't mind me sharing this. They're in the process of building a $4 million house. Now, this is where the empathy thing comes in. I don't expect you to feel bad for them, but think about this for a second. $4 million house, dream home. When that house was first being built, there were so many issues with how it was painted, how it was being constructed. And then my friend developed this lack of trust for the builders, for the materials. And it got to be where they wouldn't accept anything at that point. It became a level of OCD, and I don't say that lightly. It became almost a sickness, where now everything is not straight, taking levels to every part of the house. That house is now over budget. We are probably in a $7 million range. It'll never be complete. It'll never get fixed. She'll never be able to recapture the ignorance of, okay, that's beautiful. That's not perfect, but it's beautiful. Do you follow me? You get to where you've ruined your own experience with the expectation. This panel is not perfect. It is not clean. Now, people will say to you, oh man, no TV is perfect. But you have to be careful with that. Yes, no panel is perfect. No TV does everything. Every single one of them, even the AKZ2, has a shortcoming. Doesn't mean it's going to have a perfect screen or be perfectly clean. Now, chances are with those panels at that high level, there are very few of them made. So you might be better off. The X92, the QN90A at 100 inches, 98 inches, chances are they make very few of them. But not saying there's a perfect TV, that you're talking about technology-wise. Yeah, a OLED will never be as bright as an LED, and LED will never be as bright as black as an OLED, or the levels or whatever. That's different. That's a different expectation. Yes, this will never be as good as that, or vice versa. We're talking about defect-wise. They will all have an issue. None of them will be perfect. So once you get stuck on that screen uniformity thing, DSC, as we all know, dirty screen effect, you see that. Now here's the thing. Let's talk about this quickly. All LEDs have DSC of some kind. All OLEDs have banding of some kind. Every single, what was the other one we're talking about? Oh, most LEDs, regardless of how high end, will have what we call jail bars. It's a little bit of a shadowing in between each zone. Some will have that more than others. That is an inherent flaw, not a defect. Some DSC is something you'll say and go, okay, it's over there in the corner. All Sony LEDs have darker corners. All four corners will always be darker. It's the panel. It's always been like that. But what ends up happening is, like my friend with the house, you'll never be able to recapture that initial, oh my God, that's beautiful. You'll never see it the same way. I struggle with this. That's why I'm saying it to you. I will tell you, when you struggle with it, no one cares. No one. Manufacturers will only care to a certain degree. Oh man, the thing turns on. Does it show you an image? It does. Yeah, our job is done. Because the majority of people watching these displays, that's all they do. If you're talking to a retailer that doesn't game, their opinion of screen uniformity is going to be different than yours. If you game, you're going to see different screen uniformity issues that a non-gamer sees. A non-gamer's watching a space film, might see somebody fly across the screen. You might see some light banding. You're like, oh, what was that? I know exactly what that is. I see it all the time. Certain foggy elements, 12%, 15% gray. You're going to see that. I know that. Most people would see it and then not pay attention to it. In gaming, though, when you're panning around over the shoulder in God of War or whatever game you're playing, you might see a band. The question is it in your view? Do you see it in most content? Ratings.com, if you listen to them talk about screen uniformity, they will say to you, not visible in most content. That's very important. If you get to the point where you want a completely clean one, you can't buy a TV. And you thinking because you spent a lot of money, you were owed something, you are wrong. If Ferrari doesn't care that you spent $300,000+, believe me, retailers and manufacturers aren't going to care. I mean, they'll care. They'll say they're sorry. But we have to scale back what we think is an inherent flaw and a defect. TV not turning on, cracking the screen, put it back in the box. Get it out of here. Box is destroyed. Don't even open it. Send it back. But this middle ground where us enthusiasts get stuck is a prison. And it's robbing you of enjoying. I would sit there and watch a game or a movie, and this is with the Samsung KS9800. Again, the first few videos on this channel. And I'd be enjoying it, and you'd see this blue lightning come down the screen. I remember getting a replacement and playing a game and starting to reassure myself, oh, you're good, man. This one's going to be great. And then feeling pain before it happened, and then it happened. It takes you out of the moment. It's a waste of time. Shipping and picking up these panels and being around for delivery. I must have tipped $500 in delivery drivers over the years. Being there for a window, being ready. That's why I hate buying new TVs myself. Myself right now was on the verge of getting rid of my C1 and getting a G2. 83 inches is a tough G2. Screen uniformity is tough on that size. I don't know if I want to get involved with that again. Even me buying it from Value Electronics, who I have a great relationship, I don't know if I want to get involved with that again. I know they're going to have some issues. Regardless if I keep it for years or not, I'm sensitive to it as you are. So I'm not a hypocrite. I'm telling you, you have to find a way to find that middle ground. What's a defect? What's an inherent flaw? What can you live with? What can't you live with? The more money you spend does not buy you anything other than that panel. Don't buy for bragging rights. I've always said this. Don't buy to say, oh, I have this. People are buying very expensive TVs or very expensive things and thinking, wow, this thing doesn't even work. But as I mentioned, you buy a very expensive oven, the retailer is going to tell you, I'll send somebody out to repair it. TVs is the one place where we're saying, well, hey, I want a different one. I want something else. And that's going away. Amazon, Best Buy, much closer tabs on returns. There's a million influencers that buy TVs and return them. Many. Buying and changing your mind. The manufacturers and retailers are on that now. They're not going to let you. A buddy of mine used to buy monitors. He knew there were a lot of them were defective. He'd buy like 8 of them and just test them all and then send them back. He wasn't a YouTuber. He was just saying, look, I know I need more. Amazon was good with that back in the day. Not now. They're going to give you a hard time returning one, especially if it's large and expensive. Something small, you can drop off at UPS. Go ahead. 1, 2. But believe me, I've been on the phone with them for hours saying, look, I'm not paying a restocking fee. This thing has, and I would shoot them pictures, but screen uniformity issues, the number one thing that we have issues with in the panel lottery, to the manufacturer and or retailer is not a good enough reason. After this many minutes, it's not a good enough reason. I don't agree with that. However, it is a fact. Dead pixels, again, the manufacturer's tolerance can be like up to 50. Depends on where they are. To me, HDR, the brightness of these panels has actually shown so many of their flaws. The battle to be thin caused so many problems. HDR, getting very bright. Doing these were showing all of the flaws that you and I perhaps never noticed before. We watch the way things are filmed. If you've noticed, most things on Netflix are a gray, ugly, drab type of content. A lot of OLEDs struggle in that 15% gray area. A lot of blooming and black bars. The content itself might not be high quality. Streaming. As much as digital copies of films have gotten so much better, they're so close to disc, that compression mixed with your screen shows the flaws. No streaming years ago. Smaller TVs years ago. Go back and think about what the glory days of plasma. But 200 nits? You weren't seeing the flaws. Back then, they either turned on or they didn't. But now we have all of these different things that we struggle with. And that is the problem with, again, being an enthusiast. It's the one thing. You can be an enthusiast PC builder. If the FPS is there, you're not going to return your graphics card. It's probably not the graphics card. It's your GPU. It's the power supply. It's the CPU. It's your RAM. With TVs, it's visual. Sounds common sense, but it's not. It doesn't turn on, you're good to go. It's broken, you're good to go. But it's that in between. Where is this flaw on the screen? And I promise you, as I mentioned, what you think is a flaw, especially if you go down that rabbit hole, you'll be looking in shadows. Don't get to that place. If you're getting to that place, stop buying. Step back, give me my money back. I don't want anything. It will ruin things for you. Time is so valuable. Health, so valuable. When I was going through this panel lottery, There were things happening in my life that were life and death for very close family members. So you say to yourself, well, Brian, that should give you proper context. Why do you care about this if this is happening? Well, this was distracting me from that. Not only that, I had to go in a particular time to take advantage of the return window. It was robbing me of the moments of being exhausted and just watching a movie. So many games weren't completed, moments lost. Now, this isn't troubleshooting. This isn't, hey, it doesn't work, I think the e-arc goes out. No, I'm talking about the biggest culprit is screen uniformity. And it is the most subjective. It's the most hard to nail down. Articulating, hey, I think I have an older, we have situations where I think I have an older G2. Well, if that's LG's thing, that's not grounds for return. Looking for things like that, a retailer's not going to refund you if you don't like something. Or, hey, I read somewhere this guy in some video said, this is happening. They're not going to refund you. The S95B, bent panels. That is a concern because they're small. OLEDs at 77 always had bent panels. They're enormous. But now if you get a bent panel, it doesn't affect the picture quality. Do you bring it back? Depends the bend. If it's like this, bring it back. But this conversation will ruin your mental health. If you feel like, okay, I'm watching this too, this got to be a subject is all I talked about in that period of time. My kids will never be that young again. I'll never be that age again. Sounds dramatic, but it was. Samsung doesn't care. Best Buy didn't care. Amazon didn't care. So you have to step back a little bit and see what you can live with and what is realistic. Because when you start returning 1, 2, 3, like my friend in that house, the builders will start to wipe their hands. Believe me, these manufacturers do not care if you don't buy another one. You're not the main person. And I tell you, the more you complain and the more you rant, the more they want less to do with you. The more they'll step away. It's a hard thing. These should be perfect. Perfect. I don't mean technologically perfect. They will have their flaws. Not bright enough, not dark enough. That's a flaw of the technology. But functionality, turn on, turn off. That is them doing their job. Show you an image? Yeah, then it's perfect. No, it's the one appliance. It is the one technology where there are variances in what is acceptable. Your variance or your tolerance for what is acceptable is much different than someone else. Your husband, your wife, your partner, your roommates might look at this and go, it's fine. But because you spent the money and you spent the time, if you have more than one return, your tolerance has gone down. You're fatigued. This thing has ruined you. Don't let it happen. Take your business back and say, look, I'm done. The problem is, if you want a TV, it's something that you're going to have to deal with. My advice to you, again, at the very end of the video, is look at it, see if it works, see if it's okay, test it in that return window. Discover what the return window is in detail. In detail. Find out what that is. Use the panel hard for the return window. Then run testing on it if you see an issue. If you don't see anything, I wouldn't run slides because you can't unsee those things. Some of you have found banding on panels that weren't even a visible thing. You went and ran the slides. Look right there. It's there. Now you're looking for it. And that's the disease. Don't get to where you will look for issues. You will find them. In life, you want problems? Look as hard as possible. You're going to find them. I'm passionate about this. I lost so much time on this. And I will tell you, there are thousands of hours of movies and games I didn't enjoy. Entire console generations I lost. Hundreds of games on that PC that remind me of that. It's an illness. It's like it's not to say it. It's like a post-traumatic stress. I don't use that lightly. It will trigger. But getting impatient Raging will get you nothing but hung up on. People care less than ever. You start talking about what you spent, you're going to lose them right away. Companies aren't impressed with what you spent. Again, think Ferrari syndrome. They're not like, oh my God, you're the best. It might be that before you buy it. Remember, before the sale, your real estate agent is all about making sure you're happy. After the sale, not their problem. Builders, the more they return to your home, the more money they lose. Self-preservation is what matters to all of these businesses. You can say, and I've gotten crap over this over the years, what do you care about Best Buy and those big guys for? I'm not telling you I care about them. I'm telling you they're running a business. And they are not going to let things hurt them. Returns were a big deal for Best Buy, a big deal for Amazon. Well, now the guidelines are much more strict. You cannot walk in there and say, look, I think I have some vertical banding. They're going to say, what in the hell is that? Remember also, as an enthusiast, and you guys being educated, you know more than most salespeople. That's not a knock on salespeople. But you also have employees that are beaten down, tired, store managers. Back in the day when you had a guy or a salesman at a Best Buy, or I should say like a Wiz or Circuit City, one of my buddies was one of those guys. He wore a suit to work. He clearly knew more than you because he was buying things more expensive. He had discounts. Those guys now don't have the stuff you have. And with that goes empathy. They're not going to feel bad. They're not going to be like, oh, what this poor guy. They're going to be like, oh, look, man, this guy's bothering me. You follow me? This is where it gets worse and worse and worse. Panel lottery exists. Why does it exist? Is it manufacturing? Is it transit? Shipping? My guess is there is some in transit. There is some shipping. Manufacturing, to me, is the main culprit. What are the tolerances? If you've ever worked in machine shops, every 1,000 pieces they have to recalibrate. Is that part of the variance? Again, Samsung, are they the most guilty? I don't know. I can't base that on the number of people who have told me they're defective because so many more are sold. It sounds like they're the worst. So many more are sold. I know Vizio's quality control because they don't sell as many. And they have power failures. It's not screen uniformity. So I can say with specificity, they have an issue with quality control, in my experience. But they sell far less. It's different than a Samsung that sells 1 billion of them, and our percentage of people paying attention see that as a huge flaw. None of them are correct. They all should not happen, but they do. And going higher end doesn't buy you out of it. Me, when you go high end, you're buying better picture quality. You're buying better technology. Sometimes when you buy something of a better value, my favorite piece of technology in my house is an Optoma 3D projector. It was $400. It always works. It's great. But also and I should have talked about this in the beginning, my expectations were much lower. I was happy the thing turned on. And I love the picture quality because I didn't spend that much money. At the very end of the video, spend what you're comfortable spending. Don't go high end thinking you're going to buy your way to better build quality or better inspections. Do you follow me? Buy what you're comfortable, because if you're not comfortable spending that money, it's going to haunt you. So be mindful. You can afford it, buy it. Your expectations are still that it should be this, but don't overextend yourself financially because it just makes it worse, especially if you're stuck with it. The reality is you may be stuck with it. Buy from retailers that are authorized dealers. We've had some of our guys on here that have bought from, I can't even tell you the names of them, but some online retailers where the prices are a little too good to be true. They may say they're authorized. What does that mean? That means that Samsung, LG, Sony will not honor the 1-year warranty from them. They won't. Buy extended warranties at Best Buy or Costco. Check the policy, return policy. When can it be returned and why? And then go into the process. But don't get into the pixel peeping, guys, because I'm telling you right now, you can't unsee it. I can't unsee it. I see it on every panel I see, and I see hundreds of them at the highest end. I just scale back my expectations and know what is an inherent flaw and what is acceptable. All right, guys, I am Brian, and this is a tech therapy video. I apologize, they are very long. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. What has your experience has been with the panel lottery? How do you handle it? What have you been through? Share your stories, and if it's a specific manufacturer and or retailer, tell me about it in the comments. It makes for a very interesting discussion. This is a very important video. Again, check out Paul's Tech Giant. Again, his doesn't function. Those are the easiest to discern. It's those in the middle, the screen uniformity, that is the hardest to figure out and perhaps the most torturous. Do not let it mess with your mental state. Thank you for watching. Love you guys. Take care.